Okay, if you'll turn to 636, number 2 says, write each product as a sum or difference of sines and or cosines. So the first one is the cosine of 10x times the sine of 5x. And then we look at our reference sheets. I should make one of these really big and put on the wall, huh? All right. You see the sum and difference formulas, and you see the product to sum formulas right underneath it. Okay. So there are 4 product to sum formulas. The first one has 2 sine values. The second one has 2 cosines. And then the next 2 are pretty much the same thing. It's sine then cosine or cosine then sine. So really the last 2 are the same. Does that make sense to you guys? The only difference is the subtraction on the inside, but you could flip it around and it wouldn't end up mattering. So which formula are we going to use here? The last one, because it's the only one that has cosine first and sine second. Okay, and then we need to define alpha as 10x and beta as 5x. So the formula says 1/2, and it puts brackets because there are a lot of parentheses throughout that whole formula. The sine of alpha plus beta, which would be 15x, and then minus, minus the sine of alpha minus beta, which is going to be 5x, and that is the sum. Does that make sense? I think we're just converting. So, wow, they only have 3. So in the book, if you look on 636, I didn't do it, Corbin. I even pronounced the word anxiety just like you do. I said, oh, this mess is giving me anxiety. You are. You you should get star credits on IMDb. You'll be first billed on my videos. Yeah, the check's in the mail. Okay, so if you look on 636, they only have 3 formulas. So you can switch that sine and cosine if needed. You see that? And then it'll end up being the same thing if you switch the sine and the cosine. But it's kind of handy to have 4. All right. Let's do number 8. The sine of pi x over 2 and so the sine of pi x over 2 times the sine of, what's the other one? 5 pi x over 2. Which formula do we use? The first one, 1/2 times the cosine of alpha minus beta. So this is alpha and this is beta. What is pi x over 2 minus 5 pi x over 2? Negative 4 pi x over 2. Which is, sorry, it's just negative 2 pi x. And then minus the cosine of, you add them together and you get 6 pi x over 2, which is 3 pi x. So I heard somebody mention, do you switch to radians? And we're not actually sure that this is a radian measure. But what it's saying, it doesn't matter what the numbers are, um, whether it's in degrees or radians, this is still going to be true. It's probably in radians, but we don't really know. But it'll be true either way. It will give different answers, but if you work it in degrees, that answer will work, and if you work in radians, that answer will also work. Okay? Those are pretty simple. Okay, like 12? Let's do 12. So 2 sine, what is it? 2.1? 2.1x and sine of 3.4x. Okay. No. I mean, we're not talking about a specific angle. We're actually talking about a curve, a sine curve. Okay. So this will be alpha and this will be beta. And this 2 is just going to hang out in the front of everything. And then it will cancel that 1/2. So we can actually get rid of this stuff, and we just get the cosine of, that's subtraction, so negative 1.3 x, and then minus the cosine of 5.5. Does that make sense? Okay, let's make sure Cynthia doesn't throw us some kind of curveball, which she does sometimes. Okay, so it looks like, it's really weird. They do an example of a specific angle, but there aren't any problems like that. So that'll take you all the way to 13. And then in the next set, you're just going to go backwards. So 16 is the cosine of 2x minus the cosine of 4x. And this is a little bit harder to do. Which formula should we use? So why the first one and not the second one? We have cosine minus cosine. Okay. Now, you need to remember that this is alpha minus beta, right? If you look at the formula. And this one is alpha plus beta. So alpha minus beta is equal to 2x, and alpha plus beta is equal to 4x. How do we figure out what alpha and beta are? Okay, now this one you can do in your head because it is quite simple. So which is which? So alpha equals 1, x, or sorry, 3x. Yeah, you said it right. I wrote it down wrong. Alpha is 3x, and beta is x. Okay, what if it's not so obvious? What do you do? It's not a quadratic. Substitution, elimination, graphing, or matricy. So I'm going to write it as a system. Alpha plus beta equals 4x. And this one's actually pretty easy. We want to do elimination. You could put it in your matrix and do RREF, but this one's so easy. The betas cancel, and I get 2 alpha equals 6x, so alpha must be 3x. So then you put 3x in here. 3x minus what is 2x? 1x. Okay, now that's not the whole story. I now know that alpha is 3x and beta is x. And I also know I'm using the first formula, but something's missing. There is supposed to be a 1/2 out here, but there isn't. So I have 1 times sine equals 1/2 times cosine minus cosine. That's what I'm supposed to see, right? But this number is a 1, which means this number, so right, this number right here is a 1. The formula says this number is supposed to be a 1/2. So what number should go in front so that the 1/2 is actually a 1? 2. So Nate was right. This is twice as big as it's supposed to be, which means this will be twice as big as it's supposed to be. So it's going to be 2 sine of 3x sine of x. Now, is that the only answer? No, because you could adapt the a's and b's to get minuses and plus, but this is the easiest answer. Okay, and I imagine where Cynthia only had 3 formulas, yours should match almost every time. We have 4 formulas, so we might end up, right, those last 2, you might get an answer that has a different sign and will have A and B in a different order, but that's okay. All right, do you want to see another one of those? So let's do 28. Wait, did we just, yeah, let's do 28. So the sine of 3 pi x over 4 5 pi over 4x. Oh, sorry, I can only do one thing at a time. So I'm old today. Okay. First off, this is a 1, which means out front needs to be a 2. What if that number was a 6? What would go out front? 12. What if that number was 1/4? What would go out front? 1/2. Everybody understand that? Okay. And we're going to use the third formula, right? Because I have sine plus sine. Okay. Well, I know that alpha plus beta is equal to 3 pi x over 4. Everybody okay with that? And I also know that alpha minus beta is 5 pi x over 4. So I'm just going to use elimination. 2 alpha, those cancel, is equal to 8 pi x over 4, which simplifies to be 2 pi x. So 3 plus 5 is 8/4, which turns into a 2. So I divide by 2, and I get alpha is pi x, and then I plug that back in. Pi x plus what is 3 pi over 4x, and it would be negative 1 pi over 4. So beta is negative pi x over 4. Okay. Now I can write the product formula, or the, sure. Oh, wow. Yeah, there are some to product formulas right there. Oh, I'm doing it the hard way. Okay. Hold on. Let me finish this one and then I'll show you. So the answer is the sine of pi x times the cosine of negative pi x over 4. Okay, now as Nate pointed out, we actually have the sum to product formulas. So you can just use the formula as written. Is that giving you anxiety? How about this? All right, look at the sum to product formulas. This actually has a set of instructions for you. So of those 4 sum to product formulas, which one do we have? Yeah, I think so. So the first one, okay? So it calls alpha 3 pi x over 4, and it calls beta 5 pi x over 4. And then we don't have to do a system. All we have to do is follow the formula. And the formula says we double this number, 2, times the cosine of alpha plus beta over 2. So alpha plus beta would be 8 pi x over 4, which simplifies to be 2 pi x, and then we cut that in half, pi x. Oh, you're right, sorry. Okay, and then we're going to multiply that by the cosine of alpha minus beta over 2. So we get negative 2 pi over 4, cut that in half, negative 1 pi over 4, so, or over 2. No. So it's negative 2 pi x over 4, which is negative pi x over 2, and then I have to cut that in half. The formula tells you divided by 2, negative pi x over 4. Wow, that's the best looking pi I've ever drawn. I didn't even mean to do that. So thanks, Nate. That's way easier. Corbin, question? Okay. All right. And then the next set, you have to do 29, 31, and 33. It's just simplifying. So look at number 30. Number 30 says the sine of 4x plus the sine of 2x over the cosine of 4x minus the cosine of 2x. Are we going to use product to sum or sum to product? We're going to use sum to product because we have sums. Okay, let's focus on the top. Which formula do I use to simplify the top? Sine plus sine, which is the first one. So the numerator will be 2 times the sine of, add them together, 6x divided by 2 is 3x, times the cosine, so it'd be 4x plus 2x is, or sorry, 4x minus 2x is 2x divided by 2 is just x, over, which formula are we going to use for the bottom? The last one. So that formula is negative 2 times the sine. It's going to be 3x over the cosine, sine of, it would still be x, right? Because it's 4x minus 2x would be, no, the negative's out front. So this is x. Now what happens? Sines cancel, the 2's cancel, and I'm left with negative cosine over sine, which is equal to the cotangent of x. Negative cotangent. Thank you. Do you want to see another one of those? Those are pretty easy. We're good? Okay, let's get to work.